I will start video in the process of putting it back together and getting all the fittings changed. We got the electrical elements we got to change. We got to get the stainless braided hooked up correctly. We'll start getting our insulation package put back on there. We'll get that tank mounted back in here, and we'll start getting this dude riveted back together. And that's where we're at for right now. Start getting our new insulation pads laid in here. Like I say, your blower assembly is going to go through here. Your stir pump for your boiler tank back here. We have a new bottom piece. This is where the exhaust will go out. So we're going to start getting the rest of this stripped down. Like I say, there's seal tape that goes around all the seams, so we're just going to slice it off and get all these old insulation packs off of here. The top piece of insulation, if I can find it here somewhere, let me show you. All right, so our top piece right here for our fuel cap, you'll notice that there's some wiring that's going to run across the tank right here. All right, so you'll have to get that underneath all that and then put the insulation pack on. Or what you can do is you can actually take and you can ever so slightly score the top edge here, and then you can lay that wiring harness into it so that it will ultimately end up back over here to where you can make all your connections from your control board. So we're going to get the insulation packs put on here. We'll get this side put on there. I just stuck it in there to show you what it's like. But we're going to get all the insulation put back on it totally so we can seal up all the seams and everything like that. And then we'll wrestle this heavy thing, boom, back into the housing. And then we can start getting the these little side walls and partition walls and everything. Will all end up riveted back here all the way across the bottom. And then up this side, the only thing that's going to hold that piece will be the rivets across the bottom here. And then when the top goes back over it, it will get riveted up the side. Okay. So we're going to continue on here. We'll get all our insulation packs put on here. They had again, this was a PEX drain valve also. No bueno. We're going to change that out. We're going to go to all water piping here, a brass valve so that we don't eat it up with the water over time. Although, you know, you'll have Hydro-Hot fluid in here, and it does have additives in it that will protect all these steel fittings. That's why you should never run just plain water in here. You need those additives to help keep this thing from corroding on the inside. Why it cracked here, honestly, folks, I have no idea. It really is like a stress crack, but I mean, this thing's been in there since 2004, so I don't know. I have no answer for that. Most of the time, these things will just rot out in the bottom. Mr. Carrillo sent me some pictures of some units that they have disassembled, and I will include those in here because it literally looks exactly the way ours looked. You'll see in the pictures where the insulation is just gone, and it's just a mess. But I'll include those photos also so you can see what these things look like just being disassembled in their nasty state when they first come in for rebuild. So just like that, we'll continue on around, sealing all of the seams really well with some seam seal tape. It's just any kind of like heating, ventilation tape like that. You can buy it at like Home Depot, Lowe's, AC place, whatever. And anyway, we're just going to continue around it, Get all the seams sealed up really good here. We got another end piece here. Let me grab it. Another end piece right here. It's gonna go right in there, like so. And then we'll do the same thing. We'll go all around there. We'll get all these seams sealed really, really well. And we'll move on to getting the tank back in there. So what you're gonna end up with is a really nicely insulated box, just like that. So to get this piece out, we did have to pull the fittings, basically strip it all down, pull the cover off, put the new piece down in there, and put it all back together. Be very, very, I can't say very enough, careful with these fittings. They are just soldered into the tank and they will crack on you. Again, not the end of the world as long as you know what you're doing, but I didn't want to run the risk of that. So be very, very careful. Use a backup wrench on absolutely everything. Try to keep it still. Only turn the fitting that you're trying to get off. I can't stress that enough, okay? But there it is, a really nicely insulated box. The only piece we have left to put on is, of course, on the bottom side here, and that'd be this piece right here for the burner and everything like that. So we'll get it flipped up on its end. We'll get that on there. We'll get it all sealed in there, and then we will start trying to get it back into the housing. All right, so of course, while we got it all torn apart here and we've got easy access to everything, we're gonna go ahead and change out our heating element here for the house side current, as well as our AC limit switch. It's much easier right now than when we get everything in there. And then we will go ahead and install our fittings and stuff like that so we can get them all sealed up real good. We'll install our new drain valve and everything like that. We'll go ahead and put all that stuff back in there before we put the insulation back over it, because it's just a lot easier to get to it right now. Don't need any of this stuff because we're pretty much just going to replace all the wiring anyways. Okay, so we're just going to use a 5/8 box end wrench here. We'll just slip it over the wire, get on our switch. It shouldn't be very tight. We'll just break it loose. We'll get our old switch out and we'll pop the new one in. All right, just barely snug this down. It does not need to be as tight as you can get it. It's made out of brass and it will snap off very, very easy. Just like that. So we have our new electric heating element here for the house current side. It's 1.5 inches. It's basically just a standard, like a hot water heater element, but it's just 1.5 inches. So anyway, we just broke it loose. We'll get the old one out. Ooh, it's crusty. Lots of buildup on it. But anyways, there is a control relay that when you push your button on the inside of your coach for the electric side, it energizes a coil which closes a contact and lets your house current side go through to this. That relay is bad on ours, and those contacts were closed all the time. So I suspect that we probably literally just burnt this thing plumb smooth up, as well as the switch in here, because it never would technically ever shut off unless you just shut the Hydro-Hot off completely. But anyway, that's it. We're going to put the new one in there. So we got our new element here. I just use some it's synthetic O-ring lube. It's called Viper lube. It really doesn't matter what you use. Just make sure it's for O-rings, and you know, it won't deteriorate the rubber or anything like that. And then once you get that lubed up real good, and we'll literally just slide it back in there. Once we get it in there, same thing. Don't need to bury it in there. It's just a rubber O-ring that's sealing it from leaking. Not as tight as it can get. That's not going to seal it. But anyway, we'll just snug that back up and we'll move on to the fittings. So again, all you're doing is snugging it. It's the O-ring that's sealing it. And I mean, it literally could almost be hand tight, really and truly. But we're just going to give it a little bit of a snug, just like that. All right, not trying to bury it in there, otherwise we would just cut our O-ring and would do just absolutely no good. All right, so we got the element in there, so now we're gonna go ahead and put our hose fittings back in there. Remember to use a good thread sealant, PTFE, something like that. And not that you couldn't get these things back out once you get it all in there, but why would you want to? So be sure that you seal up those threads really, really well, all right? And now these are just to 3/4 inch hose barb, so they're going to be a 7/8 inch socket. And anyway, we'll get them back in there and we will go ahead and snug all the fittings up and we'll move on to the next step. And of course, we're all human, so I apologize. I incorrectly told you these are actually a 5/8 inch hose barb, not 3/4 inch. Still, it is a 7/8 inch socket. Well, guys, I'm kind of sorry I can't show you like the action shots of doing everything like that, but I mean, this thing weighs a ton. It's hard to hold the phone and video it, so all I can try to do is just explain it the way I'm doing it step by step here. So obviously, we've turned it up on its end. We've got the front face of insulation put on it. You can see, so normally we would be sitting kind of like this. So our float switch, our wiring coming from the other side for the pumps and everything. High limit switches here for all the various heaters and such forth. We got our hoses and stuff put back on there for the stir pump, our zone pumps. Like I say, it's easier to do all that before you slide the insulation on, because like I say, it's not that you can't get to those clamps up in there, but they are way up in there after that. So I just stuck everything on it and then slid the insulation back up over it. Don't forget your little T-bolts here. Don't want to get that behind your insulation for the blower fuel pump assembly. And anyway, it's all sealed up. All the seams are all nice and sealed up. That's our exhaust pipe. It will ultimately end up right here facing down. So the next step is just to turn this thing on its side, and we'll rotate it 90 degrees and plop it back down in here, and we can start riveting everything back in there. All our pumps can go back on, our electrical boxes and such forth. We got a new cap for it here also. So that's where we're at. Let's get it flipped on its side and let's sit it back in the box. All right, so we got our tank set back down onto the housing, and we will start getting the rivets put back in now for the partition in here. I've just got this one stuck through the holes right now for the time being, because the top plate will actually go down over this, over the whole thing. So I don't want to pop this one down just yet, because there's another piece on there. But we went ahead and popped the side. We popped the side on right here, and we got this one right here on the bottom. And there's also, if we look at it underneath here, if you can see this or not, I'll try to point them out, but there's a bunch right here, 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 and here that come up through the bottom, and it will hold this bottom plate down to it. So we're gonna get all those put in it, and then we'll move on to getting our lid put on. We've already installed our fitting here and changed out from that PEX plastic crap that was all up in here. And it's not that PEX is not awesome. That is the most awesome stuff you can work with, but not in here, because there's no clear 90s and stuff, and it was just a bunch of conglomeration. Like I say, it was all this junk right here. So they originally had this fitting in here, and then they had this thing all kind of ramrodded up in there like that. It was not the way to go. This is the way it's supposed to be done, like that. So that's chunk. We're gonna trash that. Anyway, got our stainless line put on there, looking good so far. Let's move on with getting all the rivets into the bottom piece, and then we can move on to getting this in here. Once we get the top piece back on, we can actually install our circulation pump. It goes on from the inside, but the rivets will come from this side out in. So we'll have to do all that before it goes back in the motorhome, because you cannot get to the rivets once it's in there. And then we will start getting all our hoses and everything, our electrical put back on there. And my goodness, this thing will start looking like a Hydra-Hot again. Maybe. Also, this is where our new stir pump will go for the engine. Like I said, we're gonna have to do a little bit of modification because this pump is obsolete. But there it is. We are slowly getting there. Let's get the next piece put on. There we go. All right, so we got our top cover put back on it. Now we're looking at the back here. I got it turned around backwards on the truck, so this is the front. But like I say, you see that top cover kind of overlays that. So we'll get all these lined up now, and we'll start getting our rivets put in all the way around. And then we'll get them lined up all the way down the back. And this side partition wall right here, we'll get these put back in and everything like that. Once we get all those put back in, then that thing is all bound together again, and it won't go anywhere. So anyway, let's continue. We'll start working on getting the rest of the rivets in here. in the little partition wall here, the back side of the burner really. And man, we're making progress. We're getting there slowly. There we go. All the way around the front, down the front side, down the left side, all the way down the back, all the way down the bottom of the back, and up the side here. And then all the ones across the bottom that we did. That's it. That's all it takes to get all the casing off of one of these and to get the casing back on. It's just a ton of pop rivets. But that's it for the most part. It's put back together now. Now we can just continue with moving on with all our internal components right in here. Our blower assembly fuel pump. We can get our new stir pump put on. We got our new drain valve put in here. And well, we already got the bottom lines hooked up to our stir pump, or to our zone pumps here, but we'll go ahead and get the top lines put back on here. And then we can start working our way into getting the wiring harness back in here. And that is it, pretty much what can be done on the outside. The rest of it, we'll move on to getting it back into the coach, and then we can start hooking up all the water lines and fuel lines and all that kind of stuff like that. But that's pretty much what it takes to put a boiler tank into one of these. You know, again, Mr. Carrillo, huge thanks to him, all his knowledge. He is so willing to help you guys out there if you have these hydronic heating systems. He has worked with him for a very, very long time, and he knows his stuff, guys. He has pretty much everything in the world to fix one of these things, and if he doesn't have it, he will come up with some kind of a solution. Like I say, our pumps are obsolete, and he immediately came up with a solution on how to try to resolve that situation, and he's just a wonderful guy. I just can't thank enough for John Carrillo. But we'll go ahead and get our new grommet put on, and then we'll start trying to get it back into the coach. All right, so a little overview again here, moving on. We've got our grommet put on the top here for the cap. We went ahead and got our blower assembly stuck back in there. Our stir pump is of course back in there. It's all hooked up with the hoses. Not that you can't do this with this in here, but I would go ahead and do that first before you put this back in here. There's a lot more room. We got our fuel lines hooked back up here. This is some of the wiring that just goes to the blower assembly. We just kind of got all this wiring just twisted together, tuck it up out of the way a little bit here. We started getting our AC, our house side voltage back together here. So we got our new relay put on. Of course, our new high limit switches up in there, our new element. And just a quick view of how this thing works is so get this situated here. So your signal wires from your Hydro-Hot control panel, so inside the motorhome when you push electric, dink, the little green light comes on. All it's doing is it's energizing a 12-volt circuit right here and closing a coil. And when that coil closes, or energizes rather, it closes these contacts in here, and it lets these contacts basically go closed. So the way it's going to work is our electrical side, our house current, 110 volt AC is going to come in here. It's not the proper way to use the terminology, but it's just an easy way for most people to relate. So you'll basically have your hot wire and your ground wire, right? Which is really not. But anyways, our ground wire, which is not, is going to come in through here, and it's going to go to one side of our heating element. All right, and it's also going to be grounded to the case. So that's what, let me dig in here. That's what this green wire is to the case. And this little black wire hanging loose right here goes to one side of our element, okay? The other wire coming in from our AC line here, the hot wire, which it's not, is going to go to the other side of our contact right here, okay? So when we energize it and it closes the contact, it's going to let the voltage go through the relay, out of the relay, through the high limit switch, out of the high limit switch to the element, all right? So as long as the high limit switch is cool, it's closed, and it's just going to let the voltage flow through here to the element. That's a 215 degree switch. So once it gets basically to 215 degrees, those contacts, it's just a thermal switch. Those contacts are going to open, and it's going to stop the flow of electricity to the heating element. In essential, it's going to turn the element off, all right? When the water temperature cools back down, the thermal switch will then close again, and it will start the cycle over again. It'll let voltage go through and our element will start heating again. All right. Vice versa, if we go back inside and we turn the Hot off, tink, these contacts are going to open. It's going to stop the flow of electricity to the switch. No more heating element. All right. You can run either the diesel heater or the electric heater. I have heard people in some cases will run both. Like if you have a high demand, this one will help supplement the diesel burner. I think the diesel burner is probably way more efficient than heating it electric wise, but and this is such an insignificant amount of diesel, it really doesn't make a difference. But ours has never worked, so I've never got to try that. So I'm kind of super excited about getting all that fixed so that all that'll work also. But we're getting closer. We just started a little bit of pre-wiring on this. Really, we can't finish that up until we get our line back in there from the house side current, 110 volts. And anyway, we'll start getting the wiring harness back in here now, so we can start getting all of this stuff connected back up, and we'll get our control module put back in here, and ever closer. All right, moving on to the wiring harness. So we'll get all this and this all routed back down through here inside. We'll start getting it routed back the way it's supposed to be. There is obviously a ton of extra wiring, as it literally only has to go from right here just barely to the sidewall to the control panel. So once we get all that routed, we'll curl it all back up and wire tie it back like they used to have it originally. We just cut everything loose though to get it out, because it's a whole lot easier to just get all this cable strung out so that you can start working from the end points and pull it back through. So anyway, let's start getting that put back in. We'll start getting all the connections made back up. You'll notice I have a lot of tape on here. They are all labeled where they went. They're also numbered though, and you know, if you the numbers will correspond like with on your control panel, your control panel wiring and stuff like that. And down here, and also again, John Carrillo, he said if you have any problems, call me. I can literally walk through you step by step if the numbers are not readable or anything like that. So anyway, we're going to move on, get all those connections made up, and once we get all those connections made up and everything like that, it is time to bloop back in there so we can start getting hoses connected back up. So there it is, one fully rebuilt Hot unit. We got all the wiring back in it, connected up. We'll just leave it laying on the top for now until we get it back in there. So the next step up is back in there. But before we do that, obviously we have a lot of cleaning to do in the bay, more parts that I'd taken off of it and stuff like that. And we're gonna get all that cleaned out. We'll get all the bay cleaned up. Everything clean, everything wiped down, all the walls and everything cleaned back up and everything. There is some water laying in there from when we took all the hoses loose. So we'll get all that dried out, and then I'll leave the bay open here for a couple hours. I mean, it was only 101 degrees today, so it shouldn't take too long to get all that dried out there. But next step is that back in there and all of that connected back into there, and we'll get the wiring run back over there and connect it up, and then we'll tidy up everything. And on to the next project after all that will be the exhaust, because remember, the exhaust was trashed. I had to cut it all off, so we'll have to rebuild all that. And so I'll have to collect the pipe and the elbows. It's all 1.5 inches, and we can get all that routed back out and make all that look pretty. So on to the next step.